That's exciting.
Super exciting. Cool. Okay. Well, Erin, thank you so much for joining me and joining OutPass Trekking tonight as part of our Firefly Summer Speaker Series. We're going to be talking to you about the art and science of soulpreneurship, which I can personally attest you are a very, you're kind of the expert on this from my point of view. So I'm really excited to learn from you and to dive a little bit deeper with you tonight.
Yay.
Yay!
For having me. It's a good and art and science.
It is a great and. For Elise and Lance and for anybody who watches this afterwards, obviously, as with most things in life, you get out what you put in. So please ask questions if they come up. Chat us if something that Erin says resonates with you, and participate as much as possible. We'd love to hear from you tonight. And I mentioned at the start of this that this is Erin's session as part of a larger Firefly Summer Speaker Series that OutPass Trekking has been doing since the beginning of June. We're actually kind of in our final stretch. You are the third to last one. We have 2 more after this, and you can find more details about our final 2 sessions at outpasstrekking.co. And you might be wondering, what the heck is OutPass Trekking? Lucky for all of you. I am uniquely qualified to answer that question. OutPass Trekking is, we provide 4 and 7 day backcountry retreats and 1-day intensives in Austin or while we're out on the road. And really the purpose of those retreats is to provide an opportunity for you to get back to nature, to shed the weight of technology, shed the weight of your everyday, and have an opportunity to zoom out on your big goals, your life purpose, what you want to do next with your vision, your career, and get an opportunity to zoom in and really find those actionable steps towards your next act. And do all of that while connecting with other people who love the outdoors, who love nature, and who consider themselves fellow growth seekers. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and make this all about Erin. Welcome, Erin. Thanks so much for joining me. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. I just spent an hour between things with some tomatoes that are growing in my backyard. We planted a couple months back, just in the pandemic. It was one of the only things available. And it grew to, I think we've got like 4 feet of like cherry tomato plants. And it's been so fun because all I do is water and it grows without me doing anything else. And it's a really interesting metaphor for business. Like, I don't control the vines or when the tomatoes ripen. I don't know which tomatoes are going to ripen, but every day in the morning, I'll go out to water and I check. And even today, I watered this morning and went out this afternoon, and new tomatoes had started to yellow on their way to turning orange, which is the final color of these particular tomatoes. So it was really cool.
And that's a way that you connect to nature, which I totally love. I'm also growing some tomato plants right now, but mine haven't started producing fruit yet. I'm a little late to the game.
We're planting a whole garden, and one of the things, you said connect to nature. Since March, I have very rarely left my neighborhood, and I am so grateful that I have almost 2.5 miles of trails and roads and like really beautiful things to walk in every day. And my wife and I have just recently started walking in the mornings, and she sees things I don't. And it's been really fun to have her point out, oh, that's a funnel spider. I don't know what a funnel spider is, but apparently it's a thing. Or, oh, that's this wildflower, or she's really good at birds. And she says, oh, that's a kingbird, or that's a bluebird. Oh. Super cool to have as part of my everyday routine.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I kind of want to start by talking a little bit about what you do and who you work with every day. So you're a transformational coach. You're my coach, which makes me feel very lucky that you're here with me tonight. You're a social psychologist. We cross paths at UT, both in the psych department. You are also a writer and a speaker. Tell me a little bit about your soulpreneurship journey and what it means to you.
Yeah. So our big friendship started when we were both at Facebook. Mm-hmm. And there's a whole long story to it, but I left academia after having gotten my PhD in psychology. I've always been obsessed with people and like trying to really deeply understand like what makes people tick. How do they think? How do they feel? Like what makes them do what they do? And I went to Facebook, and I loved the concept of 2 billion at the time, 2 billion people, it's now 3, I've read, that I could have impact on, 2 billion people I could have impact on by doing research on how they think and how they feel and how they behave on Facebook. And there's a whole long story to my 3.5 years there, but I started to really kind of question, what is impact? What does it mean? Are we doing good in the world? I was starting to hear more stories about just how difficult the problem is really at Facebook to impact that many people and the diversity of people in the world. And at the same time, my mom got really sick. It was about a little over 3 years ago. And she, out of the blue, went from a functioning human being to in the hospital, comatose, with a staph infection that turned into spinal meningitis. And she spent 6 months in a rehab hospital learning to move all of her limbs, every single one of them. Like, imagine moving a finger and then learning to move another finger and like can't move anything else. And I was, at the time, I was a leader at Facebook, and they were so gracious in letting me fly home. My mom's in Arizona, fly home every couple of weeks to be with her. But every time I was with my mom, I was feeling guilty that I wasn't taking care of my team and feeling like, oh my God, I'm going to lose my job. And then every time I was back in Silicon Valley in San Francisco with my team, wondering like, how is my mom dealing today? She can't move. I mean, she was literally immobilized. And so it started me down this path of, okay, what do I really want to do on this planet? Clearly I care about impact. Clearly my family means a lot to me. My wife's family means a lot to her. And so at the time, I hired a coach for just burnout, and she helped me get really clear that, oh, I do really want to make an impact, but I want to have that impact on my terms. I want to choose that impact. And I really, really care about family. And so we moved, seems counterintuitive, we moved to Michigan. My mom spends her summers here in Michigan. My wife's family is 2 hours away in Ohio. My wife's sister and best friend are both in Chicago. And then I started coaching because I was like, well, if I am having this sort of, what the fuck am I doing with my life? Mm-hmm. How many other people are having that? And how many other people really want to make a difference and they don't know how? And they feel trapped by their job, or they have this secret entrepreneurial dream, which is what we came to coach on. Mm-hmm. And so now that's who I work with. And it could be any stage of the entrepreneurial journey, but I really, really love working with people who are like, I have this mission inside of me and this message inside of me, although they don't always know what their message is yet, but I need to go do that thing in the world. And they're usually leaving the safety of corporate. Mm-hmm. They're leaving the path of the external validation, of the good salary, the rewards, of the bonuses, the titles that come with it. And they're like, who am I to leave this safety to go do this thing? And what if I do that and then I lose all of my finances, or I fail, or whatnot? And so I help them with that journey, and I help them get in touch with who are they not to go do this? And what is the cost of not following? I call it, so I'm not the one who come up with it, but like I call it soulpreneurship, because it's really tapping into like what lights you up from here down, like down here in your sternum, mm-hmm. not from up here in your head. And it's a really freaking hard journey. So I spend a lot of time working on how do you help people with the inner work that comes along with leaping out of a safety net into this unknown territory. And how do you do that? What are the strategies that you need to build your business? And what are the skill sets you need to develop, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah. Thank you for that.
It was long-winded.
No, I appreciate it. I'm curious, where do you feel like you are as a soulpreneur today?
Say more about that question. What do you want to know?
Well, something I noticed as you were explaining your journey to your soulpreneurship today, you placed a really special emphasis on the word choose. And I'm just really curious, what is it about choice, and how are you feeling about choice and choosing in your soulpreneurship journey today?
Yeah, this is a fantastic question. Something you and I have talked about, and something we talked about on our first Big Bend trip, is this idea that we live a created life, and that many people are living life by default or reporting back on what's happened to them. And I've come to realize that in every moment we get to create or choose, as you were putting it, what we want.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have created and I am creating every moment of every day the life that I want. And I'm not going to lie, entrepreneurship it's hard. And you've got to be ready for it being uncertain. I've had months of incredible abundance followed by months of nothing. And it's tested every piece of resilience in me. But every day I'm choosing to create, what do I want my whole life to be like? There's such an importance for me of family, and none of this is worth it if I don't spend time with my family. And so I'm getting to choose every day. How much do I spend time with my family? How do I work on my business? And there's this, going back to the art and science of soulpreneurship, I'm actually choosing every day, what do I want to create in my business? What are the programs that light me up? Who are the people that light me up? I mean, yeah, I have a specific set of people that I generally work with, but if someone comes my way that doesn't fit the profile, but they're freaking phenomenal, I'm going to work with them, because why not?
Yeah.
Everybody needs a little bit of like someone on their side helping them move towards their dreams. Let's be real. So yeah, I'm choosing every day. Every day is a choice. When I get into a mindset of I don't have a choice, I rethink that, and we'll see what I create in my business, in my life, in my world as I keep going forward.
I love that. You mentioned that, I mean, going back to this concept of choice, it seems like soulpreneurship is more of a commitment to a journey and remaking that commitment every day.
Yep.
Versus allowing yourself to default back to something that feels comfortable and known. I'm curious, has there been a moment when you felt the urge to default back, or when it was hard to choose the journey for that day?
Oh, every day.
Every day.
Oh yeah. It's easy and it's hard every day. I think it is a journey, and there's times when it's really, really tempting to go back to whether it's the 9-to-5 job or some other form of certainty. Earlier this year, before COVID hit, I had one of those several months where it was like everything I did didn't feel like anything was happening. And I told my own coach at the time, and she was like, just keep going. She was really, really helpful on that. And what I've learned about entrepreneurship that's so, so powerful is just like the tomatoes, like you never know when something's going to ripen, right? You never know when your thing's going to grow tall, or you don't even know necessarily what seeds you're planting. And 6 months later, things I did a year ago are starting to bear fruit. Things I did 6 months ago are starting to bear fruit. And so when I get in these moments of like, oh, it'd be so much easier to go back to the default way of being and the default life, I think, but what's just about to pop that I don't know about? And let me get curious about that. And it might happen that day. It might happen a week from then. It might happen a month from then, but just reminding myself, oh, something's going to happen. And now it's to a point where like things are happening so fast, I'm having to figure out like, how do I like cut out some of the things that I don't actually have time for?
Wow. Is that where you are like right now today?
Right now, today. I was
Interesting.
just like sitting at the tomatoes, talking to my wife about, I'm getting a lot of referrals right now, and I've got programs I want to be building, and I have a book to write, and having to start choosing again, where do I focus my attention? And I'm super grateful for the abundance. It's just a different set of problems, and thinking about, okay, well, some of these referrals, who do I know that do some of my clients need clients? Like, really starting to really, how do I serve this person in front of me, even if I don't have time for them because my practice is full.
Mm. That seems like a really exciting place to be in.
It's phenomenal. It's during COVID times too, right?
Yeah, it's phenomenal.
Yeah. And that all comes from, I'm always planting seeds, always. And I'm never planting the seeds with an intention towards it growing into something in particular.
Mm.
So one of the things I talk a lot about in terms of the science part of soulpreneurship is everything's a data point. Everything you do can be a data point. And the more data you collect, the more you learn. So when I'm in that mode, I can do a lot of things, even stuff that scares me. And what I find is when I do all this stuff, and it doesn't mean I'm burning myself out, it's little things that add up, things come my way. So I go live for it was every weekday in April when COVID was really, really hitting. Client comes to me through that because someone saw one of my videos and went, oh, Erin has something to say. And then 2 months later, she got the guts to say, hey, I've been following you. And for every little thing, that starts to pay off. I go to conferences. Oh, this week, someone that I met at a conference referred me to someone else. I just talked to someone today who was referred to me by a conference referred to me from someone I met at a conference a year ago. So like, as long as I'm doing a lot of things, I don't have to know if or when things are going to pay off.
Okay.
I don't have to even guess. And that's how my practice feels. I just have to be confident that something somewhere will sprout.
Yeah. And it seems like you're living in a period of abundance right now, but you also talked about like kind of this inner work that goes along with kind of the daily exercise of chasing soulpreneurship or just living in it and choosing it every day. How do you like, how are you doing the deep inner work, and how are you leveraging your coach even in periods of immense abundance when others might say, I don't need it, I got it?
Yeah, I find that to be the best time to go deeper.
Hmm.
And I've had some really wonderful coaches in my life. So I have, in terms of support, I have a one-on-one coach that I've been working with for almost 2 years. And I also have a community of peer coaches that I meet up with virtually. We meet bi-weekly, and then we're supposed to meet in person, but COVID. So I just came off of that last week where we spent 5 days together. And then I have smaller groups of like 4 or 5 peers that I get support from as well. So I kind of get the, like, if I need strategy help, I know where to go. Hey, I'm creating this program. Can you help me with a copy that I'm writing right now? Type of strategy to my current coach, my one-on-one coach. We've been really doing the, like, what do I really care about? What is my mission? But even doing the deeper work around how do I have a lot of passion around what I want to do, and how do I do that with the right like kind of anger, which is a productive, healthy anger, or we'll work through some of my biggest fears. Like, I put out this program, Amplify, recently, and it triggered some deep, deep fears. And so I went to her and said, hey, this is coming up. Can we work through this and figure out, like, I'm not going to stop being in motion, but this is really interesting. And I know it's a blocker.
Mm.
And so we worked through, I was really worried I was going to get embarrassed. Nobody was going to sign up and everyone would know.
And how did that experiment turn out?
I mean, 12 people came to the program. I learned most people sign up at the end. But I also really went through that work of understanding, okay, my fear of embarrassment is pretty big. And where else is that showing up? Where is it stopping me from taking some bigger, bolder risks?
Mm. Is that where you feel like you are today? I mean, you're having to make choices and prioritize. How are you doing that? And how are you picking the ones that are going to drive that passion that you have?
One of the things that I have really committed to this year is sitting with things. And so I've been in no rush. So I've had some ideas of what I want to do in 2021 percolate. And I've also committed to having no goals in 2020. And so it's a very interesting, like, surrender experiment type thing of just like seeing what comes to me. And what's really nice is when I have these kind of like ideas percolating for 2021, I need to take some action on them soon. I can let them sit with me for a while and go, are they still sitting with me? Like, am I still like in the back of my mind getting really excited about this thing that I want to create? And it allows me to not just make the decision around, there's a level of what do my people need that I'm always paying attention to, but it also has to be something that I really want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so it allows me to sit with that and go, oh yeah, there's this thing I've been noodling on for a while. And I love groups. I'm probably going to do a couple groups in early 2021. And this one's been sitting with me. All right, I'm going to do it.
I do that too, that type of thinking through and like waiting to make a decision, but mostly with clothes.
Fair enough. Yeah, I'm also at a point where like I don't have to try everything anymore. So when you're early in entrepreneurship, it's so helpful to just try a whole bunch of things on, like clothes, right? See, do I like coaching groups? Do I like coaching one-on-one for me, right? Do I like the idea of doing experiences like we did in Big Bend? Do I want to run classes or big courses? The Amplify program that I'm running right now is technically an experiment. And I'm learning a ton right now from the people in the program and from myself about what do I really love doing?
Mm.
And now starting in 2021, it's like, okay, well, I now know I've tried on a whole bunch of different things. I now know what I really want to be doing because I've tried so many different things on for size.
I love that. What is the group program, the Amplify program, taught you about what you love?
I love the power of groups.
Mm-hmm.
Just the ability to engage other people and have their feedback towards another person. It's multiple perspectives. There's fun exercises you can do. There's camaraderie. People see themselves and other people and get a lot of insights. And the one thing I'm really clear about is how much richer it can be when I have time to actually deeply coach. So in the Amplify program, we have 12 people, 60 minutes a week. And there's a piece of me that wants to make sure everybody gets attention. And there's a piece of me that knows even if one person gets the whole hour, it's fine. But I have this desire to like take it to a deeper level. Like some of the concepts we're playing with are so profound and could be really enriched if it was like 5 people meeting for 2 hours a week.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah. I really want to get back to, I've run a couple of groups in the past. You've been in a group of mine, and there is something really powerful about a small group of people who are in it together, pushing each other. And there's a creativity that is different when I'm coaching a group versus one-on-one.
Mm-hmm. So I have a question about that, but it's going to shift the conversation just a little bit. And I'm thinking through your 2021 plans. You've had some ideas percolating. You've really gotten clear in 2020 about what lights you up and what you want to build as part of your soulpreneurship journey. And I'm wondering, how are you going to maintain that spirit of creativity and experimentation next year as you're doing the things that you already know bring you passion?
It's a great question. Good job, coach. Honestly, what really came to mind, because it's just sort of in my bones. My PhD was all experimental psychology, is it's now experimentation within the programs. Experimenting with different ways of coaching. I'm always learning different formats of coaching. I've taken a bunch of different courses, experimenting with different activities. It's experimenting with, what if I do let a single person take the whole 2 hours? Or what if I don't, and make it sure everybody gets equal time? I run a free Facebook community, and everything I post in there is an experiment, to be honest, everything. So there's a lot of experimentation I can do in that as well. I think there's just it's taking it from the like, oh, this big program's an experiment to like, how is every little action I'm taking an experiment?
Oh, that's super interesting. So you've talked about the experiment piece, but how are you going to maintain the kind of creativity through that and through some of these group programs or other things that you want to build?
That's when you make an experiment, it becomes creative.
Mm.
You can try anything. What do I want to try?
What do you want to try?
I don't, one thing I've been thinking about is a day where I show up and have my video off and the group runs itself.
Mm.
That's one thing. That's a good question. I haven't thought too much about different things I want to try. It's really one of those things. So creativity for me is not something I plan. It's usually what happens in the moment. And I can't tell you how many times I've coached you, Sarah, where I've made something up on the spot. And in that moment, I have no idea if it's going to work. I have no idea if you're going to get any benefit from it. And probably sometimes you have and sometimes you haven't. But that's where like my willingness to try, my willingness to experiment, and it's not necessarily rigorous experimentation, right? But my willingness to try and experiment allows me to see something in the moment, and something will come to me. And it'll usually be some combination of some other thing I've learned with my own flavor. But thinking about like, yeah, what do I want to try? It's hard for me to think about that because it really is such a like, I don't like the word channeling because I'm not super spiritual, but like there is some sort of like, there's some weird, like I'm accessing my unconscious in that moment.
Interesting. What about, and this is something I'm really curious about in your process, because you've talked through some of the things that scare you about groups, that not giving every single person attention, or maybe doing something, showing up one day and doing something wildly unexpected. And I'm curious, how do you balance acting on that fear while not planning to act on that fear? Like, how are you actually going to sort of address some of these fears if you're sort of relying on this in the moment
Here's the
channeling?
thing about fear. I do it anyway. 100%. Fear is just a function of thinking that is protective of us. And oftentimes the fear is not real. And I'm sure I've used this metaphor with you before, Sarah, but like it's like the monster under our bed or in our closet when we're kids. It's real and there as long as we don't check. The minute we go open the closet door, we get to find out that actually, for the most part, the monster is not there. Every so often the monster is, and we learn to figure it the fuck out, as we've talked about in the moment. But for the most part, our fears aren't real. And on the other side of every fear is something we want. We aren't afraid of failure. We want success, right? We are afraid of failure, but like the reason we're afraid of failure is we want success. The reason we're afraid of rejection is because we want acceptance. And so if I can remind myself in every moment, what's the desire on the other side of that fear? That's more compelling than the fear.
Yeah, that's been very true in my personal experience. And I'm curious, if I challenged you over the next month to open up one of those doors that a fear might be hiding behind and look it straight in the face, what would be the most impactful fear that you could face?
Probably. That's a good question. Here's an interesting thing I'm learning. It's how often something I think it's a fear until it actually I encounter it and it's no longer one.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh. like a couple things are swimming through my brain. I think one of the bigger fears that I am going to tackle, and I've started the process of it already, is writing a book. And there's the fear that comes up for me on that one is not around, can I write a book? Sure, I'm sure I could write a book, and there's a lot of help out there to write a book. It's can I write a book and keep my business afloat and keep my family time with, I don't see a lot of family right now because of COVID, but like, can I keep my sanity? There's also a lot of upfront costs depending on how you publish a book. And the question I have is like, am I wasting my money? What is the impact this thing is going to have? And it's interesting because, I talk about like, oh, it's like a tomato plant, right? You never know when it's going to grow, but there's, I'm very measured still when it comes to what I invest in. And I've made a ton of investments. I've been pretty open. I spent over $100,000 on myself last year, and I made over $100,000. So it balanced itself out, but that was a lot of investment, and I've done a lot of investing in myself. And there's a part of me that has this really strong fear that at some point I'm going to have spent so much money and not had the return that I'm going to pay for it.
That is an interesting, that is not what I expected, especially given your insistence on investing in yourself. Like, you don't give up.
Mm-mm.
Why do you feel like at some point there's a diminishing return on investing in yourself?
It's an interesting question. So I know for sure I'm going to reinvest in my community of peers next year, which is a pretty hefty chunk of change. I'll definitely invest in a coach if I don't invest in my current coach. So there's already a whole lot of money that comes out of pocket there. And there's a part of me that knows there'll be an exponential return on these investments over time. And there's a part of me that's like, yeah, but we still have bills to pay. And we have a long runway, and I wouldn't run out of money right away. But there's a part of me that's like, yeah, be smart. Like, make sure you've got profit. Profit is higher than loss, right?
Yeah.
And so there's just some like realistic things. And thankfully, my financial advisor is fairly bullish on what I'm doing right now. She's a good family friend of mine, and my wife is super supportive. So like, to some degree, it's old money stories, and really, really old stories about like, if I'm not careful, I'm going to run out. And this sort of fear sometimes I have of making the wrong decision. And I know I've made wrong decisions. One of the investments I made last year wasn't worth what I made. And I'm really glad I did it. I learned a ton.
So what's like the worst thing that could happen if the book was a poor investment?
Nothing really. Like, that's one of the things I ask myself when I'm really, really trapped by fears. I'll take myself down that path of, okay, what happens if the book isn't a hit? And then what happens? And what happens? Honestly, nothing.
So what
I'm
else?
going to do it.
You're going to do it.
I'm going to do it. Yeah, I'm going to do it because I lean into fear. That's how I do it. Now, the question will be just making sure for me, it still feels soul aligned, because there are so many ideas I have and so much impact I want to make in the world. And I'm totally okay with getting halfway done with the book and saying, that's not the thing.
Yeah. I guess I'm hearing you talk about two different types of investment. There's investment that pays off for you personally and how you feel or look or show up in the world. And then there's a monetary investment that either pays off or doesn't. What is the signal that you're going to use for yourself to know if the investment is paying off for you personally? Because you kind of talked about these like old money stories, and it sort of started about money, but
the signal, it doesn't matter. It'll happen. There's not a one-to-one ROI. Like, so the coaches I've had, they're personal coaches and business coaches at the same time, right?
Mhm.
And yeah, I made the money back, but like the learning I've had is worth millions already. I'll know immediately when it's like, oh, that was worth it. And it's really, really important to me. And I stress this a lot with my clients. We're going to make bad investments. It's just how this works. You can't know up front every investment, how it's going to pay off, if it's going to pay off. You just have to be willing to take the risk.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel very strongly about that. I think what it boils down to is I have to be really convicted that the book is something I want to do in order to invest in it, because it's about the book, not the investment.
Mm-hmm.
And I can invest in a whole lot of other things if the book's not aligned.
So is the book and deciding whether or not to make that investment in the book actually the most impactful fear you could face? Because I'm hearing you say, I'm going to do it. It is.
Yeah. There's a lot more underneath the book, I think. But yeah, it's probably the most impactful one. The other one that was coming to my mind is, putting one of these group programs back out in my Facebook group. It is serving to sell, and there's a very mortal fear of like, if I put something out there and nobody wants it, what does that say about me? I think the reason I haven't said that that's the one is I think I moved through that with the Amplify program. So I'm not really sure if that's truly a fear. Like, I'm struggling to find something that terrifies me, because I've moved through so much fear in the last 2 years of inner work. And I'm so like, yeah, things grip me and I still do, like, I do it anyway.
Yeah. Commitment to the process is what that sounds like to me. Like you've proved that facing your fears works, so you're going to keep doing it.
Yeah. And every time I face my fears, I get out of it, whatever it is. And oftentimes when I face my fears, really wonderful things come out of it.
Mm-hmm.
None of the biggest things I've been afraid of have come true to my knowledge.
So let's say you write the book and your time with your family and how you show up in the world and getting to do the things that you want to do is better than ever. What does that actually look like?
There's a whole lot that goes into that. I have a deep desire to have a pretty big impact on the world. I don't know exactly. I'm very committed to, we've talked about this, high intention and low attachment to goals. So I have this high intention to have big impact. I think there's a lot I've experienced, and there's a lot that I'd like to give. So I'd like to be somehow, in some way, like broadly, I don't necessarily need to be like the Brene Brown of the world or anything, but I'd like to be broadly out there. And I'd like to be deeply working with people, because as I said, this Amplify program, I constantly find myself being like, oh, I want to spend more time going deeper. And I want to be doing that with, I don't know how many hours a week, but I've been playing with what would it look like to work 4 days a week rather than 5. I'd like to spend time in the winter, not here in Michigan. I'd like to be free to go see anyone in my family whenever I want to go see them. I love traveling. I'm missing that in COVID times. So it's sort of that freedom to move about and go see people, while also having impact. And I will say, I talk about this as one of my, and is one of my big words. I don't believe it's always in balance. I think it's fluid, right? I think there are times when, the business will take, a little bit more precedence because I have live events that I'm going to or conferences I'm going to. And then there'll be times when I slow down and spend more time with my family. And the whole idea is to get to a place where, like, I could take a couple of months off and nothing's wrong with that, because I still have clients. I still have things going on. My current coach has that, where she can take a month or 2 off and then just start posting in her Facebook group. And all of a sudden she's got like 5 potential clients.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's really how it is. And it's always from the lens of, am I cultivating the life, the relationships, the impact that I care about?
Mm. Lance says that you're hitting on many of the points in his pro column when he was deducing to become an entrepreneur. I second
Ooh.
that.
Yeah, the flexibility and the freedom. And here's the thing, if you come at it with the curiosity of, I wonder if it's possible to have a 4-day work week, then all of a sudden you start looking at, well, okay, what would that look like? How do I do that? Is it, 4 10-hour days, or could I get away with 4 8-hour days, or 4 5-hour days? Right. And you can like start doing some creative things around, well, what would it look like to, we've talked about this with goals, like let's say I want to make $100,000. Well, you could do traditional, I could coach a certain amount of people one-on-one for $100,000, or I could go like, what would one person pay me for $100,000? Not that there's anyone out there that has there probably are people out there who have $100,000. But what if? And then I start getting creative, and all of a sudden all these ideas flood in that then can come back into my business. And maybe they're not $100,000 program, but they're like, oh, I can make $20,000 because I have 5 people in the program, or whatever. Yeah. So I love this idea of entrepreneurship and thinking like, well, what do I want? And then I wonder how that's possible.
Yeah. Would you say you're doing that right now with the book? Just like living in the space of curiosity?
Always. Curiosity is one of my favorite C's. And I wonder what would happen if. I wonder what would happen if I wrote a book. I wonder what would happen if I did a 4-day work week. I wonder what would happen if I designed a program that was a $50,000 program. Mm-hmm. And I'm also curious about where those will show up in my life without me trying. So as I move through my impact journey, the people I'm meeting, I wonder who knows a person. So the other day I said, in a room of 30 people, I want Glennon Doyle on my podcast. And sure enough, I'm 1.5 degrees of separation from Glennon Doyle, and I have a plan. It may not work. High intention, low attachment. It may not work. But holy crap, had I not put it out there, I wonder if anyone in this group has connection to Glennon Doyle. Who else am I not asking about, right?
Yeah. Yes.
You said this to me recently. You were at a program and you were like, oh, Michelle Obama. And I was like, you know, someone in this room used to work for Barack Obama, right?
Yeah, that was phenomenal. And she's also going to be on your podcast soon, right?
She is. But like when you have that curiosity and you come at this, like, what if I start from the premise that it's possible? Which so many of us come at the premise of it's impossible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Everything in your world shifts when you just turn that upside down and you think, well, there could be a way because I thought of it to begin with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wonder what's possible.
I actually want to end on that question, but I want to turn it back to you. What's one thing you haven't verbalized out loud yet that you internally might feel is impossible in this moment, but through curiosity, maybe could be possible?
I want to make enough money in my life to have so much of it that I get to invest like crazy in the causes that I care about. Earlier on this year, my coach had me, and I'm not going to say numbers because I don't feel like it right now, but like she had me dream about how much money I want to make over the next 30 years. And not because she's all into money, but because it was a really good dream. And yeah, what if I could go do some really, really big things, make a big impact, not just directly with the business that I'm running, but with my philanthropy. And that feels impossible right now. And it's probably not.
I just got goosebumps listening to that. I feel like you are on a path to turn wealth and philanthropy on its head and to teach other people how to use their money for good, which is really exciting.
That is really, really exciting. There are people out there doing that, or at least trying. I want to help them do it even better.
Heck yeah. Not Jeff Bezos, but I think Erin Baker is a better household name anyway.
Yeah. It's a little bit, yeah, apparently it's very common though. This is note to self next time I get married, which is never. Don't take my wife's very common last name.
Well, I still love Erin Baker.
I love Erin Baker too. It's harder to find me on the interwebs because there are lots of Erin Bakers.
Yeah, that's something to think about.
Yeah, but it rolls off the tongue.
It does. Erin, I want to thank you so much for spending this hour with me and for everyone who joined us. If you want to connect with Erin further, she mentioned the Heart Leader Launchpad group that she runs on Facebook. I know Lance is in it, and I'm in it as well.
So was Elise.
And Elise, yay!
The lurker.
But you also have a podcast called Life in the And. And you can check that podcast out at erinmbaker.com/life in the and. Yeah. Anything you want to add there, Erin?
There are some really, really phenomenal people I've had on the Life in the And podcast, including Sarah Kettles. And if you take a listen, let me know who you want on the podcast, because on my path to Glennon Doyle, LOL, I want to talk to anyone and everyone who's got a big ass mission to create a more authentic, inclusive, and loving world.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Y'all, thanks for attending. That's all we had tonight. I really appreciate all of you. And I hope you have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you.